Welcome to this Eloquent System webinar on terminology control. My name is Maria Robinson. I'm a consultant at Eloquent Systems. We're going to talk today about your authority records and classification schemes. It's important to keep your terminology consistent and organized. This will aid you in record entry and in the searching. We'll start off with some discussion of how to maintain control over your authorities and classification structures as time goes on. Then we'll talk about how to enter these terms into your system, starting with name and subject authorities, which are relevant across all the systems, except records really. Then we'll take a look at classification schemes, which are most relevant to records and museums, but they use the same lessons from authority control. Then we'll take a look at some examples of worse and better ways of tackling this issue, and what users should be able to expect in conducting their searches before moving into a live demo. Some of you may not be using these tables in your system at all, and others may be struggling to keep these lists of terms from spiraling out of control. I'm going to speak very generally here, and then launch into more specifics as we cover the entry forms later on. The best strategy is to put some thought into this first, before you create a single authority record in the system. Some industries and regions have pre-made standard lists that you can use, like the Art and Architecture Thesaurus or the BC Thesaurus for British Columbia Archives. There's Nomenclature 3.0 for museum cataloging, ARCS, or the Administrative Records Classification System for records, or the LGMA for local government records in BC. Library of Congress, Library and Archives Canada, and OCLC also provide authority records for the taking. Sticking with an industry standard is a good start. However, there are usually some areas that are specific to your institutional holdings that aren't as well covered. Or perhaps it's the other way around, where the industry goes into extraordinary detail and it's just not necessary for what you have. You will almost definitely need to make some adjustments, either in adding terms or removing them. So you should think of your authority records as a complete body of work, not as loosely connected collection of terms. If you start down that road, it becomes too easy to start making changes ad hoc, and the next thing you know, you have a mess on your hands. If you think of it as a body, a structured and organized set of terms, then you'll realize that every change you make needs to be considered in the context of the whole. I also recommend building out your authorities in a hierarchical structure. If you're using an existing thesaurus or set of subject headings, this has most likely been done for you. The advantage of the hierarchy of having general terms that get more specific is the ability to provide a greater context to your chosen terms. I'll show you some examples later where hierarchy has been thought of but not that well applied. And you'll see how much easier it is to search with a real hierarchy of terms. This is also the time to decide upon your formatting standards. Again, some industries have standards you should follow, like AACR2 cataloging standard for libraries. If you're borrowing a set of terms from an existing source, then all you need to do is copy that style over. Once you have your plan, you can use our batch entry screens to get these authority records in fast, or you can let us do a mass import for you. Your next task is to develop rules, and hopefully document them, for assigning these terms to your records. The general rule is to assign at the lowest relevant level, and only at that level. There's no need to assign the whole hierarchy of terms and include all of the higher, more general terms. The lowest one implies the upper ones. So in archives, where record description is also hierarchical, you want to apply these terms to the highest possible level. So this is assuming that if a series has been tagged with a certain term, then that term also applies to all the files and the items below it, so you don't need to repeat. Another rule of thumb is to assign only a handful of terms to any given record. Choose the ones that have the most meaning for that record. If you assign too many, the meaning of that record gets lost. If you assign too few, then you're not really helping anyone understand what this record is about, and you're not helping them find it. Updates should be made sparingly and only with great necessity. I really want to stress the importance of starting off with a complete product. While it is easy to update, add, or delete the authority records themselves in Eloquent, it's not as easy to deal with the potential ramifications for all of the records you've already described and cataloged. Here's some examples. If you add a new term, do you then go back and reevaluate all of your records and titles, or do you risk that relevant records aren't being accessible or will not be accessible via that term? If you delete a term, all those records will have lost an access point in part of their description. And if you update a record, then you better be sure that it's still relevant and appropriate for all of the records to which that term has already been assigned. So putting in the time at the start may seem like a drag, but fixing a mess afterwards is really going to be 10 times the trouble. So you can monitor your authorities and classification schemes using our reporting features. It's possible if you're on an earlier version of our software, you won't see these options in your system. So you might want to think about an upgrade. Give us a call. In Library and in Archives, you have two options. You can go to the Authorities section of your menu and perform a search. Same for museums with classification scheme. You use the Go menu to select a reporting option. You can choose to either see a report displayed immediately, or you can choose to export it. The system will then send you a text file to your inbox and you can open it in Excel. Second option is to log into your administrator account and go under Maintenance and Search/Export. If you're using Eloquent Records, you need to log on to the administrator account because your classification scheme is only maintained there. So that's your only option, unless, of course, you've changed your default users and groups. You can also use some of these search screens to search for new authorities created or modified during certain periods of time by certain users. That's a good way to keep tabs on how your authorities list might be changing. If you're finding lots of additions, maybe it's time to hold a staff meeting and talk about strategy. Now here's something I bet you didn't know you could do in Eloquent. You can easily clean up your duplicate authority records. If you're coming into Eloquent with a mess of imported terms, or if your terms have gotten out of control and you now have 6 different authority records, all for essentially the same thing, then you can use our Redirect and Flag as Deleted utility. So what happens here is you select the correct term, and then Eloquent goes through all of the records that the incorrect terms are assigned to, it retags them with the correct one, and then deletes the incorrect ones. It's a great cleanup. And this is available through your administrator account. So the very last menu item when you log in as administrator is Redirect and Flag as Deleted. You can then select your name's authorities or subject authorities. You'll search for the duplicated terms. In the results window, your next steps do need to be taken carefully, so listen carefully. The first checkbox that you mark is for the correct term. Eloquent remembers what the first checkbox you checked off is. Any subsequent checkboxes that you mark are for the incorrect terms. Anything left unchecked will be ignored. After you've checked everything off in the correct order, select Redirect and Flag as Deleted from the Go menu and let the process run. It might take a while depending on how many records you're dealing with. So let's turn to the specific types of authorities in Eloquent and take a look at how to enter them and how to organize them in the system. So names authorities include the archival collection creators, library book authors and illustrators, and geographic names. These names live in a separate table, and they allow you to enter them once and connect to them multiple times from multiple records. So instead of creating the same author information on every title record, you create an entry in the names authority table for that author, and then you connect to it from the title records. Or, instead of including the same biographical or administrative histories to every record created or every record related to somebody or something, create an entry in the names authority table for that person or corporate body, and then you connect it to various descriptions. The forms are more or less the same, and they're most often found in your menus under a heading called Authority Control, but it might vary slightly from system to system. In Eloquent Library, there's actually only the one form for all of your authorities. So this includes authors, subjects, illustrators, and series titles. In this form, you get to enter the following. Name. So you need to decide how to format this. If you're creating a name authority, it's common to see the last name, comma, first name, and sometimes birth and death dates, either in parentheses or following another comma. Most, if not all, libraries are following AACR2, but please consult whichever standard you are following, and please, at the very least, be consistent. It's the most important rule. Authority type is a drop-down pick list that comes pre-populated with options like people, subjects, and series. You can customize this list for the exact type of authorities you want to track. See also is for related terms, and then see from is for non-preferred or alternative spellings or terms. This is where you might put alternative spellings, common misspellings, or nicknames. If someone searches your authorities under one of these alternative names, they will be redirected to the correct authority name. Broader term. This is where a potential hierarchy comes in, but it's more relevant for subject terms, and we're going to talk about that in a few minutes, so I'm going to skip over it for now. Eloquent archives and museum use the same form for their proper name authorities. This one's longer, and it has a few more and different fields than you're going to find on the library form. Bear with me through this. I've got 3 different examples for you here that are each taking advantage of different types of fields. The one you see in front of you now is for the proper name Archives of Ontario. The authority type here, which is also a customizable drop-down, is corporate name. But if you wanted to see a drop-down like government name, you can add that in yourself. The superior body is Ontario, the province. So this is an example of inserting a hierarchy into your authority records. You have a larger body and smaller ones that fall beneath it. You can do the same thing with a company and the departments that make it up, or even a family and the individuals in it. So then we see the administrative history below that. And there's a few other things filled out, but they're not as important at the moment. Our next example is for the Canadian National Exhibition. This one has been classified as a function. There's no superior body in this case, but we do see a predecessor body. So before the CNE, there was the Toronto Industrial Exhibition. When organizations or functions change name, or a new one takes over for an old one, you're going to want to create a new authority record with its own descriptive details, and then link it to the old one through this predecessor bodies field. Non-preferred names field here is the equivalent of the see from field we just saw on the library form. This is where you will enter alternative names, spellings, and nicknames. Now, if someone searches for one of these other alternative versions, they will be redirected to the correct term. See also is for terms related in one way or another to the main authority heading, but they're not for a superior body or predecessor or a successor. So this is related in a more horizontal way, not in a hierarchical way. The third example shows you a geographic authority type. You'll see here that the geography area of the form has been filled out. By providing the latitude and longitude, you're going to automatically get that map icon show up on any search results that have this authority tied to them. Your other option is to provide the zip or postal code, which is in the field right above this screenshot. Now we also have batch entry forms using Eloquent Spreadsheet for your authorities. These forms have the basic fields available, and they allow you to enter many records at once. This form shows you 9 authorities being entered below the superior TTC authority record. So you can use these batch entry forms to enter new data or to modify existing data. They can be really helpful in cleaning up your terms and in creating a hierarchy. So you can select a number of existing terms, for example, by using the search button. Then you can select your higher level or change your higher level. And when you click Save, these terms will be saved as a lower level beneath this parent term. Let's turn to subject authorities. These function the same as name authorities. While name authorities are for keeping track of proper names, subject authorities are for keywords and topics related to your records. These can also be organized into a hierarchy of terms, in this case broader terms to narrower terms instead of superior or predecessor bodies to child or successor bodies. As I mentioned before, Eloquent Library uses the same form for all of its authority records. So here's an example of a subject term. This one has been labeled as a thesaurus term, thesaurus being one way to organize your subjects. You have an entry under See Also, which remember is a related term, but not hierarchically so. Under See From, there are 2 entries for alternative words or phrases for this term. And at the bottom we have a broader term assigned. So you can see that this term is a narrower or more specific term than another one. Eloquent Archives uses a slightly different form for its subject terms. Here we get the authority name and a scope note explaining the appropriate use and meaning of that term. In this example, there are no non-preferred terms, but we do see a broader term showing the hierarchical structure of the subject terms, and also a C also for other related terms. Batch forms are also provided for subject authority entry. These have the fields you see in front of you, slightly different than the others, but of course these are always customizable depending on what you need to do. And of course these can be used for editing and cleaning up, as well as entering new authorities. Classification. This is a function that's used by both museums and records. It's a bit of a different creature, but many of the same ideas apply. You want to see a hierarchical structure moving from the general to the specific, and you want to map this out ahead of time and make your changes sparingly. Museums use a structured and controlled list of terms for human-made objects that's based on function. It's often referred to as nomenclature, but in Eloquent Museum you're going to find it under classification scheme. The form's pretty simple. You get your authority name, which often has a specific format, and you have a broader term or a parent classification. You also get a description, a see also, a see from, pretty much the same as in the previous forms we've looked at. The other thing I'd like to point out on this particular form is the source note, which was also on the previous forms. I just didn't point it out before. This can be used to give credit to the particular classification scheme you're using. So in this case, these terms have been imported from Nomenclature 3.0 for museum cataloging. You might also want to use this to give credit to maybe LGMA, Library of Congress, Art and Architecture, or whoever you're taking your terms from. And of course, we have a batch form for classification too. You select your broader term and you fill in as many child classifications as you have. It works exactly the same as any of our other batch forms. Records classification is often functionally based and designed to cover all of the functions and activities carried out by an organization in the course of business that produce records. Records classification schemes usually use numeric or alphanumeric codes, with some places do use to sources. These codes are central to the organization of the system, so you're going to see some different fields available on these forms. So in the top section, we see the higher level, which serves the same function as broader term. Notice that the high-level term has a code at the beginning. 2 fields down, after the name of the classification term that we're entering now, is the sequence code. This code will be appended to the one above to form the complete classification code for this level. And then we have the description, which gives a brief blurb about what kinds of records fall under this classification. Synonyms is just another name for non-preferred or alternative names. And cross-reference is a lot like those see also fields. It's for related classifications that are not in the direct hierarchical line. The rest of the fields on this form are very record-specific, and they're really enough to merit their own webinar on their own. So I'm not really going to go into them today, but if you are a records user and you need more information on this section and how to fill these fields out, feel free to give us a call. We'll help you out. And again, we have a batch entry form for records classifications. We have your higher or parent level classification at the top and all of the subclassifications below. We have names, codes, descriptions, and all of the other record-specific fields that are necessary for any given classification. It's time to look at some examples. I'm not going to judge these for being bad, per se, but I will show you some ways in which they can be improved. All identifying information has been removed to protect the innocent. So let's pretend I'm a library patron and I want to do a search for titles that have been given subject keywords related to education. In the precision search, I can select subject words, type in education, and then click on the mini magnifying glass to search the authorities table for the exact subject terms that are available. The good news is these results are very well organized, as you can see, and they're very consistently named. It's just that my results list is about 200 terms long. You can see that there is a hierarchy, like we have ECE, history, Canada, research, and so on. It's very consistently done. But if they were organized into a hierarchy in the back end by making use of the broader terms fields, then my results list would be a lot shorter and it would be easier to navigate. And it might look something like this. I would much rather be able to navigate up and down by expanding and closing and collapsing my subheadings than scrolling through the several pages of results. This is a screenshot stolen from a guide from the Vermont state government on authority control gone amok. We've got some great examples here of how inconsistent naming can get wildly out of control. So what happens is that neither you nor your user know which terms you're supposed to select when you go about the cataloging or the searching, which term is the right term. So for example here, you end up with one title attached to this term, 98 attached to that one, and 2 over there. It's going to be a challenge to pull back all of your Mark Twain titles in the same search. You see the same problem in the next example with Princess Diana. So I suggest you find yourself a copy of AACR2, you get your formatting straightened out and standardized, and then you can use the redirect and flag as deleted utility that I mentioned earlier to help clean up these duplicates. Searching. What should your users expect? What kind of searching experience should they be treated to? Anyone searching through your catalog and using the advanced or precision search to select subject or name authorities or museum or records classifications should be able to do the following. Enter an alternate or non-preferred term and be given the correct terms to select from. They should be able to enter a general term and have the opportunity to expand that heading to see more specific terms, or vice versa. They should be able to search for a very specific term and be able to move up the hierarchy to see the parent terms too. They should only be subjected to a single authority record for any given term. Don't make them choose between 2 or 3 nearly identical terms because you've created extra by mistake. Users should also see consistency across all of these terms. The format for names should be the same, the format for subjects should be the same, and the format for your classifications should be the same. It makes it so much easier to not only browse through their authority search results, but to select their search terms in the first place. I think it's time for a demo. I'm going to start out in the back end, and I'm going to show you how to enter your authorities, how to assign some of these authorities, and how to do some searches. And then I'm going to move to the front end and show you how that search should look. So the first thing I'm going to do is go under Authority Control. I'm logged in, by the way, in the Archives account as a senior archivist. But as I said, most of these forms, as you've seen, they're all pretty much the same. So let's go under Enter Edit Proper Name Authority. We're just going to look at a couple of examples here. I'm going to search for my authority record on Jack Layton first. And let's see how this is done. We've got a nice format set out in our authorized heading, last name, comma, first name, and dates in parentheses. And we have an authority type selected. Move down a bit, and we have our non-preferred names. So if I were to be searching, and I'll show you this later on, if I search for Smiling Jack, for example, I will be redirected to Jack Layton. I have his birth and death dates, and I have a biographical sketch in here. I've also filled out the source note information as well as a scope note that will help users or catalogers really decide, is this subject heading that I should be using? Let's do another one. Let's take the Gladstone Hotel. You see this one is a geographic name, and this also has very specific formatting up here at the top. We have the name of the place, and in parentheses, city, comma, province abbreviation. Let's move on down here. So what I want to point out is the geographic details section. Under postal code, a postal code has been entered, so that means that Google Maps mashup is now in play, and when anybody searches for this authority, they will get that map icon. They've given it a specific location type, in this case hotel. We have some other options available here too. And of course, you can customize this. And the history has been put under general history here instead of biographical sketch or administrative history area. The other thing they've done here is attach an image of the hotel. So when anybody views this authority record, they will see the image come up as well. So the image and the map and a nice description. Okay. Let's take a look at actually entering some of these things into the system. So let's say you're entering a new record, or you already have a record, and you want to add some authorities. Let's take a look at what's already been done. I'm going to search for Jack Layton again and find his full. I'm going to take that back and one of his series, and we can compare how the two differ. So at the full level, I'm just going to go straight down to access points here. I don't want to scroll through all of this. Just take a look. I just want you to note which subjects, which name authorities, and which topical authorities we have here. Because they've put these at the top level because all of these subjects are relevant to everything within this collection. We'll go back to the top again, and let's look at the series now. We'll jump down to access points, and notice that nothing more specific has been added here. So that means that the subjects we already saw at the top are relevant at this series level as well, but there's nothing more specific. But if there were something more specific, I want to show you a good way to make sure that you don't go about creating extra terms by mistake. So I think most of us know that Jack Layton was the leader of the the New Democratic Party for quite some time. So let's say I want to add the NDP on as a subject, as a name access point. So the first thing I'm going to do is try searching for it. I need to know if it exists first or not. And it's entirely possible that I have a printed list in front of me, in which case I can just, if you keep a printed list handy, then you can just search through that and see if it's there. Or you can actually search through the system. And you'll see here it's failed to find that item anywhere. Okay, but I'm not ready to create one yet. I need to try a couple of other things to be absolutely positive. I'm going to try the abbreviation this time and click Find. No luck though. Okay, but before I give up again, I want to be extra super sure. So what I'm going to try this time is politic, or either political party or politics. I just want to see what we have. So there's some interesting results here, but none of them are political parties. So that's not going to work. We'll try one more thing. Okay. So now we're getting somewhere. These are the types of results that I'm looking for. These are, the political parties. So we already have a number of them entered in, but not the New Democratic Party, which means I really will need to create a new one. But now that I've seen I have similar ones, what I can do is take a look at these and see how they've been done. So I can use these as a template to make sure I'm being consistent when I do create a new authority record. So for Progressive Conservative Party, we can see they've chosen corporate name, they have a begin date, and we have a brief administrative history. So I know when I create New Democratic Party, I should be using corporate name. So now I can click the Create button and make a new one on the fly. I can always go back and edit this later and fill in some details. When I click Save, I come back to my original form, and that's now entered as a subject. Okay. So let's do some searching and some reporting. I can show you what your options here are to monitor your system or monitor your authority records, what's being created, and how to print out some lists of what you do have in the system. So here in Archives, you have two options. One is to search for your names authorities, and one is to search through your subject authorities. I am going to choose names. I'm going to put in a keyword of homes, and I'm going to search for any name authorities with the term homes that have been created since January 1st, 2004. You would probably want to use something more like 2012, but our demo system has stayed pretty static for a while now. So here are my results, and you can see that some of them, because I have these arrows, I can click to display a hierarchy. So I know that to some extent some of my terms do have a hierarchy. They have superior bodies. Let's move this over a bit. You can see I have some options under my Go menu here. I select all hits, and I'm going to show you just two of these. Agency listing. I like this one. It's pretty thorough. It gives you all of these search results that you've just selected. And it gives you all of the predecessor agencies for each one of these and successor agencies if they exist. It also gives you if you have a superior body and there are any subordinate bodies. If you're just looking for that superior subordinate tree, you can select that instead, and it will give you a printout of those results organized into a hierarchy. All right, let's go to the front end and see what it looks like for your users. If your users want to do searching by authorities, they need to use the precision search. Here they have the option to do subject or proper name. I'm just going to do a search for elections and see what kind of subject authorities we have for that. Well, I've got a couple, and you can see they're part of a hierarchy. So what I'm going to do is see this whole hierarchy for elections. So I can see elections are part of events. I can expand events. This is just, I'm just fooling around a bit in here so you can get a sense of what it can be like to navigate up and down and maybe find a better term than maybe what you even knew you were looking for. There's elections. I'm interested in municipal elections. I will select that. I'm going to add another parameter to my search. So I'm only interested in series that are about municipal elections. Here I have a number of results. Let's take a look at one of these. Over on my record description page, I have a list of all of the topical authorities and all of the name authorities that are related to this record. And for the ones that have a hierarchy, you can see you get the whole thing spit out here. So events, elections, and municipal elections. I can hover over this and see that there are 178 records on this particular subject. And I can also click to view more detail about this particular authority. So here I see that it is a thesaurus term. I have a scope note, I have a see from, I have my see alsos, and I also have a set of my broader terms. This is kind of nice because then I can go straight up to events if I want and take a look at events. I have a list of all my narrower terms, and I can go directly to see any of the details for those terms. The source note, this is an example. This one comes from Art and Architecture Thesaurus. Okay, I think that's enough of a demonstration. Let's go back for a final review. So, we talked about control, name authorities, subject authorities, classification, and searching. So with control and reporting, we talked about ways to think about this before you actually enter anything into the system. Come up with a structure, come up with your formatting, come up with your rules for adding things and updating things and deleting them. I also showed you how to clean up your duplicate records using that flag utility, flag and delete, redirect, flag and yes, the redirect utility. Then we talked about names authorities. So I showed you the different forms you can use to enter these in, the single entry forms as well as the batch forms. And those batch forms are great because you can either use them for rapid entry to get a number of these authority terms all in at the same time, or you can use it to do some cleanup as well. You can change the higher level, or you can just edit some things quite quickly. Subject authorities, same thing. And classification, we went through this briefly for museums and for records. And again, you also have the batch entry forms here. So you can use those for editing and cleaning up and entering. And we saw a couple of examples of how you can probably do things better. And so you can see then how much nicer it is to have a collapsible and expandable hierarchy to move through when you're doing some searches. And then we talked about what your users should really be able to expect. And this really helps you out too in the back end. If you're the one doing the cataloging and the records description, it's really helpful if you know which search terms you should be using and you know what to expect when you're doing one of those searches. What types of terms are you going to get back? What kind of format will they be in? And it helps if there's only the one obvious one to choose from, that you don't have 15 duplicates that all sound similar but not quite the same, and you choose one this time and then you choose the other one the next time, and next thing you know it's a mess and nothing is consistent. So again, it helps you as a cataloger and it helps your researchers on the other side. If you have any questions, please give me a call. I'll be happy to help. So again, just remember terminology control. It's important, and get started early. Thank you.